Hello and welcome to Rebels Reaction. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
Here on Rebels Reaction, we bring you our reaction and commentary to the latest Rebels episode. This week, we react to The Last Battle. Christine, your one-word reaction.
Nostalgic.
Ooh, I had that, but I had a backup word too. Perspective.
Ooh.
All right, let's go.
You know of the rebellion against the Empire?
Perhaps you referred to the imminent attack on your rebel fleet.
Where is the rebel base?
I didn't know there was anyone willing to stand up against the Empire.
So this week, we're reacting to The Last Battle. Christine, you said nostalgia as your one-word reaction. Why?
Well, for those of us who love the Clone Wars, which I'm sure is most of our audience, we got one last taste of the Clone Wars as we knew it. Was the battle droids up against the humans, particularly Rex, the clones.
Yeah.
And reliving kind of those battles that we enjoyed when we were watching the whole Clone Wars series.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what I would have said had
Nice.
I had my first choice. But
Thinking
I let you go first. How chivalrous of me.
Aw, what a nice guy.
Yeah, I know. That's why you married me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course. So I said perspective because I think as we get to the end of the episode, Ezra has this moment with both Rex and the super tactical battle droid, Kalani, General Kalani, and bringing kind of perspective to the Clone Wars and really trying to understand why they were fighting and who the victor really was.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting that they brought that to the forefront. And I think it speaks to Palpatine and how he was orchestrating the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that he was really on both sides. So he's the winner.
Yeah.
Which
He's the cause and the winner.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to a new show we launched this month, The Force Discourse, Jeremy and Devin did a really good job of breaking down kind of Palpatine's motivation and trying to get at the root of what Palpatine's after. Super interesting listen. They interview Paul Kemp, and just a great episode. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go ahead and check that out. You can find it on our website at unmistakably.starwars.com or your iTunes feed or Stitcher feed. Totally worth your listen. But let's get into the big three.
All right.
Okay, so the big three this week, I have salvage on Agamar. So the episode opens with the Ghost crew landing on this world, Agamar, and they land at the site of a crashed separatist transport ship with the goal of salvaging whatever they can, whatever weapons, materials they can, and they quickly run into some trouble.
Naturally.
Yeah. So I think early on, one of the best lines of the entire episode was the one that Kanan had about Rex's scars. Maybe not the
Oh,
one you were
not the one
thinking
I was
of.
thinking of. Different one. But yes, you're right.
So he says something along the lines of, not all scars you can see.
Yeah.
Because Rex becomes very serious. I think he's been serious to this point in a lot of what we've seen of him, but this kind of takes it to a whole new level. This is putting him in an element that he was very used to and is very different from what he's experienced since being decommissioned.
Yeah.
So as we kind of jump into the rest of the episode, we see that come out through just his interactions with especially Ezra, because Ezra really doesn't have a whole lot of understanding of what it was like to be in the Clone Wars or what it was really like to be in full-out war.
Yeah.
He's experienced this sort of guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, but he hasn't been in real battle.
Yeah, where it's hundreds of thousands or millions of troops fighting each other.
Yeah.
And it's just
wave
chaos.
After wave and just continually coming after one another.
So the guys that are on Agamar Ezra, Kanan, Chopper, and Zeb and Rex, find out that the battle droids that were occupying the ship weren't deactivated. In fact, their leader, the super tactical battle droid, General Kalani, circumvented the order to shut them down, and then challenges the Republic troops, as he categorizes the guys on the salvage mission, to a war game, essentially. The last great battle of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Kanan and Rex are resistant, but Ezra seems to be always willing for a fight. So he jumps in, and they kind of go through this dance of a battle, or a mock battle of sorts. I mean, they're actually fighting. Droids are shooting lasers. The Kanan, Ezra, and Rex are shooting back. It's interesting, Zeb happens to be sort of the bait.
Yeah.
Because the General Kalani says, well, you're a Lasat and you weren't involved in the Clone Wars, so your friends are going to have to save you to win.
Yeah.
Which I liked having Zeb a little bit more a part of the episode, and we haven't really seen him a whole lot this season yet, so that was kind of fun. And then number 3 of the big 3, a common enemy, or I couldn't really decide, or new perspective. So I think this kind of it speaks to my one word.
Yeah.
But Ezra steps in just as Rex is about to blow the head off of General Kalani and says, wait, who was really supposed to win this battle, this clone war? The droids were deactivated. After Order 66, the clones were decommissioned. So who really won?
Jedi were dead.
Yeah, all the Jedi are dead, except a few that we find later.
Yep.
So who really won? And he brings this new perspective to both Rex and Kalani, and throughout the episode, both of them reference, as well as Kanan, referencing programming. So they've been programmed, Rex being trained from birth, Kalani in his just programming as a droid to just battle each other.
Yeah.
So that's all they know, and so their major motivation is that, and it comes out a ton in how Rex interacts with not only his crew, the guys on his team, but also the droids.
Yeah.
So he's very much in his element once again, and he kind of blows up at Ezra a couple times because of that. So by the end of the episode, the Empire shows up because of a signal that Chopper sends, which was kind of funny with Hera and Sabine trying to receive the signal but being ambushed by the Empire, and the Empire picking up that signal and then saying, well, we don't know what it says, but it's repeating, so let's go figure out what it is. Obviously, the rebels are having a hard time, so we know they're there. Let's go get them.
Yeah, like it said, it's repeating like a distress signal. They finally figured something out, which is good.
Yeah, the Empire seems to be getting smarter.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So Governor Price and why can't I remember his name? No, not Thrawn. Callus.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why that was so hard. Agent Callus are in this episode only briefly, and that the interaction, even though it was really short, I thought Callus was kind of being patronizing to Governor Price in saying, "Hey, good job, your
plan worked.
Your ambush worked." And obviously, by the end of the episode, Hera and Sabine escape.
Yeah.
So it didn't work that well.
So there's more going on with that relationship.
So I think the feeling I got, and just kind of the tendency based on previous episodes, Callus is playing both sides at this point.
Yeah.
Is the feeling I get. We haven't really gotten full confirmation of that. He had the interaction where he let part of the Ghost crew go and said, hey, tell Zeb we're even.
Yeah.
But it's really come down to what role is he actually playing? Is he trying to repay a debt in terms of some, not quite a life debt, but along those similar lines of saying, hey, Zeb kind of saved my bacon. So I need to do something to help him out. Is that continuing? And based on the Antilles extraction and the Fulcrum voice that we heard sounding uncannily like him, that he's probably working for the rebels a little bit. At least
Seems
a little bit. If not fully turning. So we'll see where that goes. But I thought that was an interesting interaction.
Yeah.
So coming back to the big three, we kind of trailed off there for a little bit. This common enemy or new perspective ends up being the Empire and the droids, the single clone, but Ezra and Zeb and Kanan as well find a common enemy in the Empire and try to get a successful escape.
Yeah, fight together.
And they part their own ways. So overall, I think a good episode, a very nostalgic episode to your reaction word. Definitely a fun one in terms of that nostalgia. So let's jump into what we really liked about the episode. Anything in particular for you?
A few things. One was Rex is kind of exhibiting signs of PTSD.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting and kind of expected. I mean, he obviously has been in war most of his life, so you'd expect it to affect his psyche. But then that's also kind of drawing out the humanity of the clones, how human, how real they are. They're essentially birthed and programmed for war. Like, he even talks about his own programming, which is a sad state to be bred into.
Yeah, that's his one job.
Yeah.
That's his whole life mission and goal. And since Order 66, that's kind of been not there for him.
Yeah. And his thought that he has programming, that like he knows he's human, but he like still kind of considers himself a cog in this machine.
Yeah.
But he's lashing out at Ezra when Ezra doesn't perform the way a soldier would, because Ezra doesn't know what he's doing.
Exactly. Yes.
And then when he gets knocked unconscious, and as he's coming to, he's having flashbacks of the war, and he hears bombs, he hears screaming, he hears he hears war.
Yeah.
He sees these droids, sees his arms in cuffs, and he's kind of freaking out. He calls for Cody, who obviously is not there anymore.
Yeah.
And it was just very real and very kind of heart-wrenching to see how his psyche has been affected, and also very just interesting seeing how human the clones are, and that's what they're meant to be. But it's sad because they were used as essentially droids, but they are humans.
Yeah, I mentioned kind of a nod to the Clone Wars, or just this overall feeling of the Clone Wars themselves. I didn't really think that far into how it speaks to the humanity of the clones versus the droids.
Yeah.
I really liked that we got more battle droids and things like ray shields, things we haven't seen
Roger.
Yeah, since the Clone Wars. Yes, the eccentricities of the B-1 battle droids.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite pieces of the Aftermath series is a B-1 battle droid that one of the characters,
Mr. Bones.
Yes, Mr. Bones, that he is a big part of that, especially the second book in that series. Yeah. So it was fun to see those characters, and if you haven't checked out the Aftermath books, the first two, I think they're worth your while if you listen to the audiobooks.
Yeah, the audiobooks are really good. They're really well done.
And it's easier to get into them. I know a lot of fans that at least read the first Aftermath book had a hard time really getting into the story because it seems a little disjointed. Mm-hmm. So I think the audiobook version helps with that.
Yeah.
So if you're not already, I mean, we listened to it on Audible. It's worth your while, and there's some great B-1 battle droid action in there.
Yeah.
So that sort of nostalgic feel, but I think, like you said, there's so much more there as far as how it speaks to the humanity of half of the army and how they were just kind of disregarded.
Yeah.
And we get that a little bit in I think it was the first episode of season 2, where we get some of those decommissioned.
Yeah, seeing what they've been doing with their lives since.
Yeah, and they're just kind of hanging out, not really knowing what to do, and still having that programming, that training be a part of where they're trying to figure out what to do. Rex's flashbacks were one thing that I really liked, speaking to that sort of PTSD side. And then Ezra's new perspective was something that really brought, I think, full circle to the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to really hear that and how he brought those two sides together. And I think that comes out of him not being in the Clone Wars. Almost other than Zeb, who added into that conversation.
Yeah.
Kanan and Rex and obviously the droids were a part of the Clone Wars, so they're very much inundated with that mindset or thinking.
Yeah.
And so he's coming from an outsider's perspective, hearing about the Clone Wars, but not really being involved in it. And
It's more able to see it from a big picture point of view.
exactly. So I thought that was really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if that plays into his view of the rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think there's some divergent path that he's going to have to take at some point apart from the rebellion, and that's probably influence of Maul and other characters. I think Maul is probably going to have the biggest influence on him, as we've already seen.
Yeah.
But this pull between dark and light, and obviously having this perspective of were the Clone Wars really worth it? So he may come to that sort of question with the rebellion, which will be really interesting to see.
And I kind of thought it was interesting how he is seeing it big picture, but still Palpatine is even bigger picture, because he says the clones were pitted against the droids, and they all the clones together obviously killed the Jedi. So those three groups were meant to destroy each other, so that the Empire could come in. But then the reality is, the droids and the clones, the whole war was, the point of it was to destabilize the galaxy and kill off the Jedi.
Yeah.
So there's even Ezra seeing this big picture concept that very few within the Star Wars universe could see, because they were so inundated with it. They had a hard time seeing it from that side.
Yeah.
But then also thinking, even with that, Palpatine was doing something so much bigger. He's just crazy, intense, intelligent, and twisted and scary.
Yes. And I don't know if Ezra quite goes to the expanse of...
Yeah, he doesn't get to that part.
What's my place in this just yet? I hope that he gets to that point and might have something along the lines of an Ahsoka moment.
Oh, yeah.
Where she kind of walks away from the Jedi Order, but still plays a role where I'm part of the way through the Ahsoka novel, so I'm, again, listening to the audiobook, sitting in the LA traffic, which is
also really good, because it's the voice actress Ahsoka who plays Ahsoka.
Yeah, totally. So we're loving Ahsoka so far, at least audiobook wise. I'm sure it seems like it would be just as good in print.
Yeah.
Check it out if you haven't. I'm sure we'll have reviews up on the site as soon as somebody finishes it.
Yeah.
That's got to be coming soon. I mentioned I liked having Zeb more of a role in the episode. We really haven't gotten a whole lot of Zeb. He's one of my favorite characters just because he's kind of... We get elements of him sort of being childish and emotional, but he just tries to be this big bad guy all the time, which is kind of... It's fun to see cracks in his armor or chinks in his armor.
Yeah.
Things that we thought could have been better. I thought overall this concept of the super tactical battle droid coming up with this sort of war game scenario. I understand as far as his programming saying, oh, the shutdown was all just a trick by the Republic, which, I mean, sort of was, if you take the perspective that the Republic was the Empire and...
Yeah. It's essentially true.
Yes.
In a kind of backwards way.
So it all kind of comes together, and I understand how it drives the story of the episode, but it didn't seem like the full weight of just a sort of provocative idea or emotional charge. I think we get a lot of the emotional charge through Rex because of this scenario, but for me, I really had a better reaction or emotional stirring to Hera's heroes and Thrawn in particular,
Okay.
where like he seemed very real in this scenario, seemed very contrived, and I think Kanan and Rex felt that, and Ezra totally just jumped in, saying, "Oh yeah, we'll beat you."
Yeah.
And how hard could that be? So it's an interesting situation that they really fall into. I didn't feel like the episode overall was as powerful as, at least from a characterization standpoint, as Hera's heroes, other than Rex.
Other than Rex, yeah.
He definitely puts in a strong performance throughout the episode, and we really get kind of perspective on how his life has really affected how he interacts with people, and even just being in a similar situation to where he had been before, constantly calling Kanan general or commander,
Yeah.
and then just always trying to correct himself. Rex was definitely the strongest piece of the episode overall for me. I think other parts could have been a little shorn up. The one thing as far as the droids went for me, I forgot how crazy scary destroyer droids are.
Oh yeah, those ones that have the shield around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really, even as Ezra admits, they would have been dead if they hadn't malfunctioned.
Yeah, it had been so old that it didn't work. Yeah.
So that was definitely a good reminder of how terrifying those droids were.
Yeah, and how terrifying the war was.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's a little bit of nitpicking, but I thought kind of drawing us into this sort of war game scenario piece could have been a little bit stronger.
Well, in that situation, it actually reminded me of a really intense and freaky short story that I cannot for the life of me remember the title of. So if you as listeners have read it, please let me know, because it's driving me crazy. But I think it gave me more of a kind of emotional, like, gut-wrenching kind of feel, because I have this character in my head when I'm looking at the droid general. But it's this man who's a hunter, who's just crazy good hunter, to the point that no animals are even a challenge for him anymore. He sets himself up on this island, and so it's all his little game.
Yeah.
People, whenever someone gets shipwrecked, which happens a lot because of the way that it's set up, he captures the humans, and then, like, kind of a little bit wines and dines them, kind of talks to him, gets him part of his story, and then essentially says, "Okay, you're my prey now," and he sets them loose on the island, and they have to try and basically beat him, which is horrifying, and no one ever does until the very end. But it's super creepy seeing someone hunting humans, and he has kind of this whole war game type thing set up, similar, and he approaches it in a similar way to this tactical battle droid.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking of when I was watching him. So the droid was freaking me out.
Yeah, and I don't read as much as you, so I know that the most dangerous prey concept.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever read that short story, but I've seen things with that similar. In fact, there was a Clone Wars episode where Bosk captures people. I forget exactly who it was. Wasn't it young Jedi Padawans?
Yeah.
And then they have to escape as they're hunted.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's totally along the same lines.
Yeah. So I didn't put that same connection together, but I can kind of see where that would come from.
Yeah.
And his I think it kind of comes down to both him and Rex having this programming, this is what my whole life or existence mission is. And
then the war ends, and then what now?
Yeah.
So just kind of stay in that.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to kind of a broader swath of just those that have been involved in combat, and the challenge that it is to really not be in that situation anymore, because it's the most stressful situation you could possibly be in. Yeah. Literally life and death almost every minute.
Yeah.
and now trying to transition into a life where that situation, that training, really doesn't matter.
It doesn't affect the day-to-day, or it shouldn't affect the day-to-day once you get home, but there's no way to get to that point because the war may end or your tour may end or whatever, but you come home and things are different, and there's really no way to assimilate perfectly or immediately flip a switch and suddenly the way you've been living and the way you've been trained for so long is ineffective or purposeless in a new environment.
Yeah, and as we kind of say these things, I think of the generation coming back from World War I, the lost generation, and just the disillusionment. Prior to World War I, we've got all this technology that's driving us towards a great society, and then we destroy ourselves. So they ask, what is it all about?
Basically, now what?
Yeah.
They all come back thinking life is purposeless.
Yeah. So a lot of different sort of emotions that are brought up and ideas that are brought up throughout this episode. Anything else that you thought could have been a little bit stronger?
I honestly liked it more from a psychological point of view.
Yeah.
I think the action was but other than the destroyer droids, the action didn't seem like it was all that difficult for them to overcome.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't like on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Yeah.
Which I feel like I probably should have been because I've seen Clone Wars, so I've seen how intense those battles can be.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't that worried about it, I guess. Which maybe could have been better, but from my perspective it was all about the psychology of what was going on rather than necessarily the actual battle itself.
Yeah. So an overall strong episode, but maybe not the best of the season thus far.
Yeah, Heroes to Heroes was really good.
It was really good. So if you haven't watched that episode or listened to our commentary on it, go ahead and check that out. Next week, or I guess in 2 weeks, I was looking at the schedule, and it looks like our next episode is November 5th. So we'll catch you the Monday after that. The title of that episode is Imperial Super Commandos.
Ooh.
Could we get Death Troopers in this episode?
Oh, that'd be fun.
Lots of things to look forward to. So if you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes to the Unmistakably Star Wars podcast. Right now we're turning out 3 shows a week. We've got this episode on Mondays, Rebels Reaction. Tuesdays, we've got our flagship podcast with Devin and Jeremy, and then Barb and Rebecca are rotating through. And then Devin is doing Star Wars on Tap, which is sitting down with Star Wars fans across the galaxy to hear their Star Wars stories. Always interesting and fun to hear other people's Star Wars stories. They're the pieces of the galaxy that they're interested in. So if you haven't checked out that series, please do. This has been Rebels Reaction. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Embrace your destiny. Welcome to the Rebellion. Is a Jedi. Rebel is a Jedi. Rebel is a Jedi.